Hello everyone, this is Rich. In the last video, we created our first index route and generated this view, and now we're going to go ahead and actually put some dynamic data in there. So, of course, we're going to look to our controller to do that. The controller is the place that does those two very important responsibilities. One is it grabs data from the persistent database backend and brings it over to the view. And then the other thing it does is it takes input from the user, retrieves it into the application, and does something with it. So we're currently fetching from the backend, sending to the view. So let's go ahead and do that. So in the controller, how do we do that? Well, if we go into our console, we have to use some of these active record methods. So we've got our post class, and we run an all method, and we actually get back an empty active record relation, which is basically just an array with a bunch of extra cool methods on it. So we need to add some stuff to the array. So here's a few things I populated earlier. So we've got our first post here, and then we're going to just send in a second post. And so we wrote that in, and then if I do post.all, now you can see it's actually returning an array of 2 posts. And so now that we actually have our posts, we can go ahead and do the exact same command we would do in the console, post.all. But of course, we need to actually capture that into a variable, otherwise nothing happens to it. It gets retrieved and then disappears forever. So we'll capture that into a instance variable. The @ symbol makes it an instance variable. The reason that's important is because if you did just a regular local variable, locally scoped, that's legal and it has created some memory space and retrieved that information, but it can never leave this little method right here, and we need it to move around our class so that we can transport that data around our application, so we have to put it into an instance variable there. So we now have our data, so let's go ahead and go into our view, and oh, we lost our all post here. So let's go ahead and just spit out. We're using embedded Ruby, so this symbol means that we want to execute Ruby code, and let's go and have a look at our post. And we will see that we actually get the object back, the actual class object that this is. So that's not very useful for a user. So we want to iterate over this object. We use the classic each method to do that, similar to like a for loop. We send in for every time we iterate over that array, we're gonna grab out this local post variable, and then we end our block right here, and so everything in between the block here will actually get printed out. So we could actually just put hello just to see it come out. And in fact, this is always a useful thing to note. We've got our 2 hellos as we expected, 2 items in our array, 2 hellos came out, but then we also get the actual output of the each command. So the reason that happens is because we have this little equals sign there, which means render this code or execute this code and then render out whatever it returns. And we don't actually want to do that. We want to execute the code without rendering anything because we're already going to be rendering stuff between the block. So if I remove that equals, that of course goes away. Let's go ahead and just put a little very basic markup in here, an unordered list, so that we get our each iteration on its own list item. And then let's actually put dynamic data in. So this time we are going to want our embedded Ruby code to spit out, so we'll keep the equals in there. And then we will send through the post, and that's just an object. So we actually want to access an attribute on the object, so we'll access the title. And now we get our 2 posts. So this has demonstrated how you can get data out of your database or whatever backend you would be using and send it on through to the view. So in the next video, we will also talk about creating our next route that we would anticipate here.